This week, we're reading poems about one of the greatest Americans that ever lived, George Washington Carver, in Carver, A Life in Poems by Marilyn Nelson. And this book of poetry gives each poem as sort of a snapshot of Dr. Carver's life. And so we get these glimpses of this incredible person and the things that he discovered, the people he met, the lives that he changed. We also get real snapshots, that is, photographs of objects that Carver made. Snapshots of specimens that he collected when he was just out walking in a field, up a mountain, in a forest. Because when Carver looked at the world, he didn't just see stuff. He saw possibilities. So Carver would pick up a rock like this, and he wouldn't just see something you stubbed your toe on when you were hiking. He would see all these different colors. And in seeing those, he would ask questions. Why is it reddish brown here and gray here and white over here? What are these different colors doing all in the same rock? And after he asked questions, he would find the answers. He would take scrapings off of this rock. He would test those scrapings. He might look at them with a magnifying glass, or later, look at them with a microscope. And just through observing with his eyes, he would discover so many things. So he would see in this rock, this is made up of different elements. And one of the most significant here is this red, which is oxidized iron, or as we would call it on our cars, rust. And after he had figured out what it was, he would ask more questions like, what can we do with it? Because he felt all of these beautiful things that are around us in the natural world are things that we can take and use to create even more beauty. So Carver would take a rock like this, with iron like this, and he might use it as pigment to paint an orchid like this. And Carver didn't just find use in the beautiful. He also looked at things that were not beautiful, things that were dead and dying, things that were diseased. And he asked questions. Why is this sick? What caused this disease? Is this made by an insect that's eaten this leaf? Is it made by something else? And one of the things that's going to be discussed in one of your poems is this incredible work he did, not only in discovering what plants do, but what make plants sick. The funguses that affect legumes. Legumes are plants like peanuts and soybeans, plants that most people didn't care much about. But Carver did, because he knew that these plants could rejuvenate soil, that they could make our farms so much healthier, that they could feed people, that they could protect farmland and help farmers continue to get high yields out of their crops. Once he did this, once he figured out how plants could help people, they then said to him, wow, that's great. This plant is made every 3 years. I get a much better cotton yield, but what do I do between? What do I do with the soybeans and the sweet potatoes and the peanuts that I've been growing? We can't just live on peanuts. And so Carver figured out over 300 things you could do with a peanut alone, so that farmers could sell all of their crops and feed their families year-round. And those sort of things are the reason that George Washington Carver is one of the greatest Americans in the world. And it's something that you're going to be discovering in our poems today. And after we look at it in literature, we're going to get hands-on. We are going to try to do some of the things that Carver did, like learn how do you take a little hooked rod and some yarn and crochet something that could be warm, like a scarf, or maybe something that would make an everyday object more beautiful, like the crocheted edge on this towel. And how can you combine these things so that the beautiful also becomes useful? Well, not only is the towel useful, but the actual crocheted material was really important in the 1890s and early 1900s when Carver was living, because there was no refrigeration, there was no air conditioning. People had their windows open, especially in the summer. And what happens when you have the windows open? You get bugs. And Carver learned that bugs could carry some of these funguses and diseases that he was seeing. They could not only spoil food, they could make people sick. And so what did you need? Well, you needed things like doilies to cover your jugs of milk, cover your cups and bowls, so that everything inside would stay fresh and uncontaminated. Join me as we think about this incredible scientist and all of the things that he did. And then as we get our hands into enjoying and experiencing some of the ways that Carver changed our lives. Can't wait to see what you all discover this week.